Okay, morning guys. So I've been meaning to do this video for a little while now, but as the car is pretty much, well, it'll never be finished, but as it's got its MOT now, or the German equivalent, the TIF, that happened yesterday, I wanted to do a little summary of all of the dents and scratches that are in the car. So you'll know from me saying previously that I didn't want to finish the car to like a concours condition. Or at least a new spray job, because each and every scratch and dent on this car tells a story. Because if it wasn't me who put it in there, it was either my dad or a friend of mine or something or other. Because when I first bought the car in 1995, it was perfect. It looked fantastic. It had a respray. It looked brilliant. So every single scratch, ding and dent has come from, or come within my ownership. So what I wanted to do is go around the car and show you all of the dents and explain a little bit behind each and every scratch. So I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so I've called this video Dent Review, and I can't take credit for that name for the video, which I think is very cool, because it came from Steam Wally. So I mentioned it to him on a text conversation that we were having on one of my videos, and I told him what I wanted to do, and he suggested the name Dent Review. So that's what this is. It's a dent review of my Series 3, and as you can see, there are quite a few of them. So I guess if I start from this side, it's as good a place to start as any. And first of all, you can see there's a scratch that goes all the way down the side there. Now, when I bought this car when I was 17, as I said, it looked fantastic at the time. It had to absolutely have a garage at home. So what I did was, we have some stables at home which have no horses in them, just full of various bits of junk and storage and so on. So what I did was I took one of these with the double doors. I've probably got a picture of it somewhere. And I cleared it all out and used it as the garage for my Land Rover. But the opening was very tight. So there was literally probably about 2 centimeters either side to get in and out. So I did everything. I sort of rigged up an alarm for the garage, like a Heath Robinson device, things you sort of do with your first car when you're 17. And that was where it lived for when I used it, or as long as I had it. So for the 3 or 4 years before I handed it over to my parents. So anyway, this big scratch along here is a result of the tightness of that opening. And it wasn't me who did it, it was my dad. And I don't know when he did it, but it was around 20 odd years ago. But obviously he was coming out of that parking space and scraped the entire side. So I guess, yeah, I wasn't too pleased at the time, although I think I was even living in Germany for the first time back then, so I didn't really know it had happened until I came home and saw it and said, well, what the hell's all this? And I remember him saying, oh yes, I must have caught it when I was coming out of the garage. As if to say, oh, well, maybe it was me, maybe it wasn't me, and I don't really remember doing it. But, it's a massive scratch, and I'm sure he does remember doing it, or did remember doing it, because it's pretty bad. This is actually a dent here. I could straighten this out, as I say. I could paint it up, but as I said before, I really don't want to do that. So that is the first major scratch on the car, and it wasn't done by me. So on this side, staying on this side, I can see a dent here. I actually have that's from inside, and I actually have no idea how that happened. So there's another one I don't know the answer to. But what you'll see also on this side, I don't know if I can get it here, is there's a scrape there, there's one there, and you know that I've repaired this section here. That was all caved in. So that was from me, and that was, without going into too much detail, that was when I had an argument with somebody and got rather upset, and rather than taking it out on anybody else, I ended up kicking the Land Rover 2 or 3 times. So it was 1, 2, 3. And that was that. But again, that was, Christ, when I owned the car and when I was driving it. So that was that. But the dent that this caused here, and you can still see the scrape from my shoe on the paint, as you can here and here. That was so badly bent in and it looks silly, so that's one of the reasons why I straightened this up a little bit and also put that stay in there, but that was literally done last week. So that was the second dent. But on this side, I think that's pretty much it. You can see pretty big scrapes down here as well, and that's all the same damage that happened when my dad drove out of the garage that time. So most of the damage on this side is from him. Okay, moving round to the back. Excuse me. Starting with this one up here. So this one was also, it's a bit of a nasty dent in the door, you can see there, quite bad. And that came from, I think that was 2001, that was, because somebody I knew when I first lived in Germany, he came to stay with us for a while. And that came from when he was trying to take the roof off, because he desperately wanted to drive around in the summer with this, with the roof off. And a part of that means, apart from taking the roof off, is you start by taking the rear door off. And he did this on his own. So he took it upon himself one morning to get up early and I suppose just do me the favour of starting the job, because it's quite a big job taking this door off and the roof. And unfortunately what happened was he was sort of trying to get the pins out of these hinges, and obviously dropped it, and the whole door sort of swung down and hit the concrete and created that dent. So that is where that dent came from. So next one, you can see, I'll try and get them in the light, you can see sort of dents there, there, there and there. So those 4 dents all happened at the same time, and that happened in Canterbury. And I think that wasn't long after I got the car, because I was at a house party in Canterbury on Ethelbert Road, if anybody knows that. Some lovely houses up there, and one of my classmates had a beautiful house up there, and it was a house that we all tended to congregate at, and used to go there quite a lot. But anyway, there was a house party there, and a couple of us were there, and I was one of the first people in the class to have a car, you know, being 17 and so on. And we were enjoying the party, and then the parents came in to where we were and said, "Oh, I think you better come outside, there's something happened to the cars." So I came outside, and this window here was smashed, and all inside the car. So it was all the smashed glasses all over the inside of the car. And that was the first thing I noticed, obviously. Then when I started looking around, I noticed these dents. So completely unrelated to me, and I don't know what happened. Maybe somebody wasn't invited to the party, or maybe there was somebody at the party who had an arch enemy outside of the party, and they'd taken a baseball bat to my car and a couple of other cars as well. So they smashed that window and put all these dents in the back of the car, which was a bit of a shame at the time, because obviously it was new to me, and had its respray done. So 4 dents at the back and the smashed window. So what else do we have in here? In here, I mean, obviously I've replaced all the hard top. So when I was rebuilding the car, some of you might remember who've followed the video from the series from the beginning, I found a whole bunch of red dye in here, and I'm still not sure what that was, because it certainly didn't come from me, and I don't know if my sister might know, or my mum might know what it was, but all of this was sort of like a red dye all around here when I cleaned that off. So it'd be interesting to know what that was. There's also a cigarette burn in this seat, and that wasn't me personally, but that was, I seem to remember, when we used to go to the Charing and Aldington point-to-point horse races quite regularly. And back in those days, I think it cost £5 at the gate or £10 at the gate to get in. So it didn't matter how many people you had in the car, it was just £5 or £10 per car. So I remember one year we met at a friend's house, and we all parked our cars there, and we all piled into this, and I think we got 10 people into the Land Rover, and got in for about 10 quid. So quite a result. And I think somebody was probably smoking at that point and dropped a cigarette butt on the seat. and or it might have either been that time or any of the other million times we all piled into this car and went to a country pub or went to a party or something. The thing is, when you have, you know, the first one or two people in the class who has a car, then obviously everybody uses that car. So that was that. But otherwise, on the inside, let me have a quick look. There are some other things in here. So this one springs to mind because when I got this car, this dashboard was absolutely perfect. And as you can see, there's a big crack here and there's one over there. Now that one I did when I was restoring it and something fell on the dashboard. But this one was, I don't know, maybe 96 or 97, when I was trying to resolve a rattle somewhere in the dashboard and I was banging things, and I think through my frustration I banged this so hard that it split the vinyl. So very unfortunate that was. I felt like a bit of an idiot because obviously it didn't stop the rattle at all. But that was that. Otherwise, in here, I don't think there's anything to report. I can't really remember or see any other damage. Oh yeah, I remembered one thing. You can see slightly these seats have a bow to them. And that happens because there's not a huge amount of support underneath. But mine are actually straightened now because part of the restoration, I refurbished these a couple of years ago and straightened them out. But these were really dented before. And that was because a friend of mine took it upon himself one evening after a few beers at the pub to borrow a bollard, one of those really big cast iron bollards, which was incredibly heavy. And I think he put it in the car because we bet him that he couldn't pick it up. So he did pick it up because he's an incredibly strong guy. He was a farmer. And he rested it in the back of my car across the two seats. And it actually stayed there for months, partly because I couldn't be bothered to try and take it out, but also because it was so bloody heavy, I couldn't take it out. And what it did is it bent those two seats. But the remnants of that is very minimal. You can see a slight bend on that one still, but not much to report there. What else do I have? That was that. So coming round to this side, this was quite a funny one actually. There aren't many on this side, but you can see basically this is the majority of the damage that was here. And if you go up to it, I've repaired it quite well actually. I say quite well, quite a lot. It used to be bent in. So another one of my friends, and I guess this is going back to, I don't know, 98, 99. He bought a Daihatsu 4-track, which was seriously it was quite a cool car, quite a cool off-roader, but it was a nightmare. I remember driving around in it, and if you touched something on the dashboard or tried to like adjust one of the air vents or something, it'd always come off on your hand. So things constantly came off. I remember we had to brake hard once and the front grille fell out of the car. It was just stuck together with duct tape. But anyway, he had quite a lot of land. And as we did every now and then, we'd fill up with petrol and go for a burn around some farmland or green lanes or whatever. But on this particular day, we were driving in his paddock. So he had horses and had a huge paddock. And we were right down the other end of the paddock and decided to have a race back to the main gate. So we both sort of sped off across the grass. And I got to the gate before he did, but he was so determined to get to the gate that he didn't stop when I got there first and crashed straight into the side there. And his car looked absolutely terrible. So apart from that stupid grille falling out again and one of the lights fell out, a whole bunch of bodywork just came off the front because although he didn't know it, somebody had sort of sprayed it in. It had a previous dent or crash damage on the front, and they'd sort of bondoed it, you know, put body filler in. And when he crashed into my car, it was actually that side, because he came sort of, into it like that. All of that body filler came out of the car on the impact and revealed all the damage to his car. So that's actually quite funny. So Jeans, if you're watching, the damage is still there that you that you caused all those years ago, but it tells a story, so it's staying. So I hope you're well, mate. But anyway, that's that. So that was that one. I think there's one last bit that I wanted to show you. Two things. So this here, this big crease in this panel here, that's remnants of a crash, my crash that I had in Canterbury on Nunnery Fields. Now, I don't know if any of you know, or any of you who are watching know Canterbury particularly well, but on Nunnery Fields, there's a pub called I think it's the Two Doves. And just up from there, there's a bridge which goes over the train line. And on that bridge, there are bollards mounted into the pavement, which protect the obviously the pedestrians going across the bridge from the cars. So on this particular evening, we've been out to the pub. I was the designated driver, so I hadn't been drinking, and we piled into my car and we were driving down that road, and one of my friends, rather foolishly, decided that he wanted to hang out of the window. So he slid this window back and started to sort of get his top half of his body out of this window while I was driving. And I was thinking, what the hell is this guy doing? And so in my efforts to pull him back in through the window while I was driving, I took my mind off the road, and when I pulled his body, I pulled down on the steering wheel, and the whole car sort of careered off the road, right on this bridge that I mentioned before, and through or into these bollards. So literally the car took three of these huge cast iron concrete filled bollards, which are about, I don't know, a metre high, clean out of the pavement, and and the car just stopped working. And this was literally 2 weeks after I got this car. So I was completely distraught because basically the whole front bumper had bent in like that. It was like a V, and this crease is where the bollards impacted here, and this was completely bent in as well. Obviously I heated it up and straightened it in the restoration, but this is the paint missing is the remnants of that crash. And what you'll see as well, it's partly to do with why this car looks a bit wonky, is because you can see this bumper, this side of the bumper is higher up than this one, because when I had the original, it had to go on the jig. The damage was so bad up at the 6 Mile garage. Maybe some of you might know that on the Stone Street in Kent. They had to put it on the jig and straighten up the chassis, but because the chassis is so tough on these things, it didn't straighten it up entirely. And I think this chassis leg was higher than that one, or no, that one was higher than this one. This was the old chassis, obviously. This has got a new chassis now. And the bumper was, when they put it back on, was completely crooked. And I sort of said, is there nothing you can do, seeing as I've paid for, the jig work and all the body work? And all the guy did at the time, he got a jack and put it under that end of the bumper, jacked it up, and just bent that bumper up. So now that this chassis is perfectly straight, you can see that this side of the bumper pushes up. And that would be remedied by a new bumper. But again, it's all part of the story and the reason why that is a little bit bent. But I was desperately looking for a photograph of the crash damage, because I do have one somewhere back at my mum's house, and I've asked her to look for it, but we haven't found it yet. So if by the time I make this video I find the picture, then I'll put it up now. But don't hold your breath, because I don't think I'll find it. So that was that. And there's also a story surrounding that crash, because the police are involved, and it was just I don't know, maybe a story for another day, but it was quite a memorable evening, at least. Partly because after the crash, I went off and phoned my parents for them to come and pick me up or try and get the car, because the car wasn't driving. I mean, unsurprisingly, I guess, but what had happened was, through the impact, and this is a safety feature of this car, the one and only safety feature of this car, is that this handle here, this high and low ratio, on impact springs out. So it goes into neutral. So basically, when I went to go and start the car and try and drive it off the road, after sort of tidying up the debris of the crash, it wouldn't go anywhere. And I didn't know that at the time, that had come out. So I just thought the car was broken. I called my dad anyway, and he came and picked me up. And this, bearing in mind, it was probably midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. we walked up to the car, and as he got into the car to try and start it, like 3 or 4 policemen jumped out of the bushes and said, right, you know, we've got you now. And they were sort of trying to tell my dad that he had stolen the car. So it was, you know, a lot of explanation. Later they sort of understood what had happened, and we clarified the situation, and then we got the car going and drove it home. But it was quite an ordeal, especially as I'd only owned the car for 2 bloody weeks, and it was already knackered. So, but the cool thing with that is, the morning after, I woke up and my parents had got up early and they'd gone down to a breaker's yard, a Land Rover specialist down in Hawkinge, and they got me this new bumper. So when I got up and looked out, they said, you know, look out the window, and on the garden table, this bumper was there. So it was a really nice gesture of them to help make it a little bit better. But anyway, so the last thing I can think of now is the hole in the grille. So that's not just the hole which has appeared on its own. That was a slightly unfortunate incident where I was on my way into Canterbury one morning, and I was driving along the Nackington Road. There's a hill there called, I think it's called Fawcett Hill. And I was driving up there, and there are fields to the left, and a whole flock of starlings came flying very low off the field and straight across the road just as I was driving past. And because I was probably going 40 or 50 miles an hour, I actually drove through the entire flock of starlings. It all happened very quickly, but it was strange because they sort of bounced off the windscreen, and I could hear them, like this, that noise like that on the front of the car. It was very strange. And not that I thought nothing of it, but I think it was a couple of days later, I was just walking past the front of the car, and I noticed this hole, and rather unfortunately, through that hole and down there on the cross member of the chassis, there was sadly a dead sparrow, or starling, whatever it was. I think they were sparrows. So I had to fish that out and bury it, of course. And that is the reason why that hole exists, because a rather unfortunate sparrow went in through the grille and paid the price. So I can't at this stage think of any other stories for this car. There was on the hardtop, which is in my garage over there, no longer on the car, there is a dent in the roof, and that was from when I was at a friend's house, and he played a lot of rugby, and we were just playing with the rugby ball outside, and he kicked it really high into the air, and it landed square on my roof. So John, if you're watching, that dent came from you, dear boy, but not to worry. But I think that's all I can think of. I mean, a whole bunch more happened with this car, and there's 1,000 stories that go with it, purely because I've owned it for such a long time. But I'm sure, looking to the future and my kids, and I'm sure they'll all drive it, there'll be a whole bunch more stories to come. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and yeah, I'll see you soon.